But when something is virtual, what does it mean? I mean, we say virtual reality. Why is it not normal reality? What is the difference? Well, normal reality is something, well, that is authentic in itself, and then it can be imitated. Whereas virtual reality is not real. We agree upon that when you are on the internet, when you are in Second Life or something. But it is not just an imitation. It is not just a simulation of something, but it produces itself out of itself. So that is the big difference. We can talk about things that are not real. In philosophy, that would be then the appearance, everything that Plato calls the appearance. The hallucination, the dream, the narrative, the simulation. Okay, that is then something unreal. That is, but why do we call it unreal? Why do we call it fake? Eco's book is Faith in Fake. Why do we call it fake? Well, we call it fake only because there is something real. Something can be fake only when there is also the real thing. There cannot be just fake as such. Well, there can. If that exists, then we call it virtual reality. In semiotic terms, it means there is a signifier. Normally, traditionally, we thought a signifier refers to a signified, and that signified is the thing. But what if it refers to the signified, but the signified is not there, is not the thing, it is just a signified. Imagine you want to go to Fahahil, you see a sign, Fahahil, that way, so you go that way. You think that the sign refers to the real thing, to Fahahil. Now you drive, Fahahil doesn't come, there comes another sign, says Fahahil, that way. Well, you go on. You move on and on, Fahahil is never coming. There's just another sign. Now you drive the whole night. It sounds like a dream. These virtual things is always like a dream. You drive the whole night. Always a new sign, Fahahil. So after 5 hours, you might conclude, you will say, you know what? I think Fahahil doesn't exist. But then somebody says, what are you talking about? See all these signs. Why would they put all these signs if it doesn't exist? That doesn't make sense, no? If there are all the signs, that means the thing must exist. And you will say, yeah, that's actually true. It must exist. That is virtual reality. That you have only the sign, you have the sign that refers to something. You have a simulation, but the simulation is not simulating something. The simulation is just simulating. I am imitating. What are you imitating? Well, I'm imitating nothing. I'm just imitating. That would be virtual reality. Well, I think, and people have been working on this, you know this probably, you know Benedict Anderson, imaginary identities, that cultures or countries are somehow not real. We have lots of signs, we have lots of symbols. Now, we would like the symbols to correspond to a certain fact. When there's a monument, well, there was a war, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes it just refers to another sign, sometimes it's just imagined. And the whole thing is in the air. There is just the signifier and the signified, and they are there together, they are floating through the air. They are not on some reality. So I was looking at that, and I thought that the ancient conception of Chinese culture is exactly that. A lot of culture, 5,000 years, but referring to itself. And I will have to explain this. And then I thought, American civilization, well, now we have to explain what is the difference, but American civilization is something similar. So culture is, first of all, the older word. It's very old. It has to do with agriculture, to cultivate something. And then civilization comes from civis, so you need people. You need a certain urban life. It has to do, yeah, it's civilization. There it is used in a way of, well, as you all know, culture is more the arts and something that is more intimate, that has to do with cultural identity, whereas civilization is more technology. That means it is progressive, it can spread, it is supposed to be exported. It can be exported very easily because it is abstract, it is about abstract structures, it is about ways how to do things, a way of doing it in a certain way. It certainly has to do with enlightenment, since we will talk about China, that when they the Japanese translated the words first, the culture and the civilization, and then the Chinese took it from the Japanese, and there is the word enlightenment in it. So civilization has to do with enlightenment. Culture, not necessarily. Culture is not really expanding by definition, but it is more something. You will have people who will tell you, well, you know, this or that culture, maybe Japanese culture or Arab culture, you cannot understand that if you are not Japanese, if you are not Arab. So don't even try. That's ours. That belongs to us. Yeah? So it is intimate. It is a personal contact that you have with your culture. But civilization, well, we have invented this technology. Let's sell it to everybody. It can only be good, cannot be bad. Just spread it through the whole world. So I think this distinction is certainly there between culture as something rooted, civilization as something more universal. But I think many people insist on that. Even in the Arab context, people talk very much about the local culture and then civilization in the sense of capitalism maybe, or modern civilization that comes, that will invade local culture. So it is not entirely useless. It is, so I like these concepts because it helps me to analyze China and America. So I started with this book by Bo Yang, which is very provocative, but it is not an academic book. It's called The Ugly Chinaman. It sounds awful, but it's very humorous. It's a kind of satire, and he makes fun of himself, he makes fun of everything. And I liked it for one reason, because there is something that can be seen as a concept. He says Chinese culture, with all these 5,000 years of things that they have in there, he compares it with soy paste vat. You know the soy paste. It's like you had a Beijing duck. They put this paste. It's northern Chinese. The miso in Japan is the same thing. You put, well, in principle, you put soybeans and flour, wheat flour, and then water, and then you wait. You do nothing. You should not stir. This civilizational structure as something that we have in America, which is very straightforward, directed towards utopia, because one tries to create an ideal society, an ideal country, by following certain abstract rules. That would be the exact contrary of that. Now you see where the hyperreal comes in. This culture, this soy paste, is getting thicker and thicker because things are only referring to themselves. Civilization, if you push it to an extreme, as a purely abstract structure, is also self-referential. Why are we doing what we are doing? Well, because it's civilization. That is the thing. That is the way that we have to go. We are not imitating anything. We are just doing it on our own. We have civilization because we want civilization. There's something similar. This book by Bo Yang, it's not really a criticism of the traditionalists and the reformers. One shouldn't, it's not that serious, but he just sees certain patterns there. And he thinks it's a drawback because whenever you want to install certain rules, it cannot be done for cultural reasons, for traditional reasons, because in this soy paste vat, there are no straightforward values, but there is a big relativism that thinks, well, relativism means everything relates to each other, and it is just a relational truth. There's nothing absolute. Whereas civilization would rather say, now we have the absolute truth and things should be done exactly this way. You find similar things from serious authors, from sinologists. I put one there, Michael Pruitt. It's very radical. Some people don't like it, but That is a newer book, and in principle he says something very similar, but it's then academic, criticizing this self-sufficient system, and that was even then the reformers, the May 4th movement, as you know perhaps, who criticized this. He said if we want to reform, we have to break a window into this vat. It leads to a mystification of one's own culture, mystifying one's own accident of history. You could say the problem is that for thousands of years people would say that this kind of culture is a civilization. Culture is civilization, because they would not see the difference. When you have only culture and you're so much in there, then you assume that this is also civilization. So you have a lot of dogmatism, you have lots of formulas, and you have a lack of criticism, you have a lack of introspection, self-criticism, self-improvement. They are concrete, but not in an empirical, scientific way, but through a refusal of transcendence, of getting out of what they have and looking at the culture from the outside, because there are too much in it. There is a lot of hierarchizing, systemizing, synthesizing, but no real progressive structure that would lead somewhere else, because one doesn't want to go somewhere else. So if you do that, you have a paradoxical result. You are hierarchical. You say, well, everything is well structured here. There's the up and there's the down. At the same time, you're very relativistic, because anything is possible. It just depends on how you put it. And there is no instance from the outside that can evaluate what you are saying and say, no, this now doesn't make sense. So it all looks very clear. At the same time, nothing is clear. So it leads to the rigidity, to often a very literal interpretation of certain things, of certain quotations from Confucius. Well, there are lots of writings about this. Did Mao change it? Apparently he did not change it. It looks as if he changed it. But some people thought that the whole Cultural Revolution is inscribed in this ancient sources. That it was obviously it was no real enlightenment. Maybe the proof for that is that the May 4th movement came after the revolution. And normally it should be the other way around. First you have the Enlightenment, then you have the revolution. Why is it the other way around? Even if you look at other Chinese countries, in Taiwan, where one tried to reform, but if you look at how the cultural identity then had been defined, it was not defined in terms of civilization either, but then they would refer to something racial. Let's say we are of the Chinese race. That goes somehow more in the direction of the soy paste vat. So there is this problem. So I want to compare all these things about the Chinese soy paste vat with Baudrillard's version or vision of America. Should you ever read it, you will find it a little tortuous, but you need to be aware from the beginning that there is one thing that he's not doing. He's not going in the same direction as Bo Yang, criticizing American culture. One could do that. You could say lots of things. You can say bad things about American culture. But he's not doing that at all. He's not interested in that. He's not interested in American culture at all. He says that. For example, some people would say, when here in this context, maybe some people would say, well, the Americans have no culture. And that is not true. There's a lot of culture. There are the subcultures. There are typically American cultures. But Baudrillard says, I'm not interested in that. I know that there's a lot of culture, but that's not interesting. I'm interested in American civilization. Now, what is that? Where is it? Well, it's nowhere. It's something abstract. It's what is the American civilization? If you look at culture in America, let's say it like that, not American culture, but culture in America.